In the gaming industry, it's crazy how many actual people work on a video game. It's a big collective group effort. But what happens when, like, one person does their job incorrectly? Or there's just, like, a bunch of oversights by multiple people? I think you get Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell instead. These types of incidents are usually pretty rare in the gaming industry, but they still come up from time to time, and it's kind of an interesting talking point. Nothing that, like, necessarily has massive implications on the game, but something where you're just like, huh, how did this happen? Now, obviously, the example I just used was from the first ever Splinter Cell game, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, published by Ubisoft, and on the PAL versions of the game, the publishers misspelled the game on the spine. Now, to be fair, this was just for the games that were printed as a part of, like, the whole Xbox Classics thing that they did for a little while, but still, what? The game Asura's Wrath actually had promotional versions of the game sent out to, like, reviewers that had a typo on the box advertising the game as having relentless action and near impossible challenges. Fortunately, they did fix it before, like, the game was out there for, like, retail versions, so they must have caught it. But man, they still sent it to reviewers like that. A trait I think we'll acknowledge more later on coming from Capcom directly. You know, now is as good a time as any to talk about some ass, or in other words, Halo. In the Halo 2 code, a .ass file or a .ass file stands for Amalgam Scene Specification, essentially a type of file that's used for generating and formatting scenario sequences within BSP files. But during Halo 2's development, if a developer tried to import something that was not uniformly scaled, like map geometry for example, you could potentially get an error message within the game engine known as a .ass error. But to take things a step further, Bungie kind of had this inside joke where one of Bungie's lead engineers, Charlie Go, apparently mooned the then Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, and they got a picture of it when it happened. I don't know the legitimacy of this story, but that's like the story that was spread around. Nonetheless, it became like a big inside joke at Bungie, and they decided whenever the .ass error would pop up when working on Halo, they would have the picture attached to it. We obviously can't show it in the video, but you can imagine what it would be like. It was just kind of like a funny inside joke, and Halo 2 shipped, you know, with its own set of issues, but, you know, ultimately they got that game out the door in pretty good shape, all things considered, how short of time they had to develop that game, and it ended up being like a massive success, and a lot of people love it, still love it to this day. It's a pretty good game, but there was like a little weird thing with the whole .ass error when Microsoft decided, hey, Bungie, send the code over to the studio Hired Gun. They're going to make a PC port of the game. Now, Hired Gun, they were tasked at porting Halo 2 to Windows Vista, and they weren't really aware of like the .ass file and picture still remaining in the game files. But as the game was nearing its ready time to ship, it became uncovered by a Microsoft team, and as a result, the ESRB apparently threatened to fine Microsoft due to the presence of nudity in the game without them like disclosing it officially to the ESRB. This then in turn forced Microsoft to delay the release of Halo 2 Vista so that the ESRB information could be updated to properly reflect what's in the game, I guess including nudity, partial nudity, I don't know. And it is rumored this delay ended up costing Microsoft as much as $500,000 and allegedly resulted in some Microsoft employees getting fired, though no one at Bungie was fired. However, it's been pretty heavily reported that after this incident, the threshold for Easter eggs in Halo games was a lot higher, and anything that they wanted to hide in the game had to kind of go through a vetting process ahead of time. The Bungie employees didn't get free reign to just like do whatever they wanted for little jokes here and there. So yeah, a wild situation, honestly. Nonetheless, the ass error could still be accessed with a little bit of modding to Halo 2 Vista. The game ended up shipping with the error, just the ESRB ratings would be updated, and there would be a patch for the game that would remove the image later on. You know, if you grew up in the early 2000s, the big debate was which was better, Pokemon or Digimon. Everyone agreed Pokemon was better, but hear me out. The Digimon anime, actually really solid. I felt like the Digimon anime, for the first like season at least, was better than Pokemon, but the games, you know, Pokemon kind of still crushes it. So it's interesting. Digimon, you know, maybe never reached the masses in the game world the same way that Pokemon did, but it still had like a lot of games that people are really fond of. But after like, you know, 2007 or so, the Digimon games kind of slowly stopped releasing in North America, probably because of a lack of interest. However, in 2015, Digimon would make a triumphant return with Digimon Story Cybersleuth. Kind of. It released in Japan in 2015 first, and then a year later in 2016, it released in North America. And man, oh man, are there some weird oddities with the translation for this game. There's a lot of little things with the localization that's just odd. There's some gender swapping that doesn't really make sense based on what character you're playing as. It's probably because in the Japanese language, they just don't use pronouns at all. And in general, the more you look at Digimon Story Cybersleuth, the more you'll realize that the translation was probably just like thrown together. I mean, sometimes there's dialogue options where you have to choose what sentence you want to say, and it makes no sense. They just combined like two sentences that go back to back anyways as two different options, and it just cuts off randomly and goes to the next line. Like, what am I looking at here? All right, guys, what do we want to say here? We could either say, if it involves connect jumping, it's okay, or we can say, dealt with this kind of thing before. Not that anybody really cares about old Star Fox lore nowadays, but 5-year-old me really did care about Star Fox, and that trait would continue all the way up until I was like, I don't know, 13 or so. I really followed the lore of Star Fox. I don't know, Star Fox 64 was such a cool game to have on the Nintendo 64, but there were some translation errors that actually ended up causing more confusion in the greater lore for the few people that did care about Star Fox lore. Like, get this, in the original Star Fox game for the Super Nintendo, there's this planet. It's called Fortuna. It's supposedly like the tropical dinosaur planet of the Star Fox universe. This gets confusing later on because in Star Fox 64, which was a redoing of the story of the original Star Fox game, but like a reboot of the series, this planet, which is a snowy Hoth-like planet, is called Fortuna. This was apparently a translation error, and I guess the planet was supposed to be called Ficina instead. I mean, not that big of a deal, right? In Star Fox Adventures, they would introduce a literal planet called Dinosaur Planet, so I mean, they separated the two. But then Star Fox Assault, they were like, hey, we're gonna just fix it all up and make it more confusing at the same time. So the first level of Star Fox Assault has you flying in a tropical planet called Fortuna, not the Fortuna from Star Fox 64, which is all snowy. And then later on in the game, you go to Ficina, the snowy planet that's like Hoth. There's a base there too. But then also you go to Dinosaur Planet, which has been renamed in this game to Saria. So like, I don't know, there's just a lot of confusion because all of these planets have different names all of a sudden, and this is supposed to still be a part of the same story canon. Nobody cares about this. Okay, by Star Fox 64 3D, they did end up renaming the planet in that version of the game to Ficina. So it does at least make sense in like the later lore, and they did acknowledge the fact, I guess, that it was a spelling mistake in the original one. But there's also confusion because in the game files, it seems like the planet was always referred to as Fortuna in the Nintendo 64 version of the game. So maybe it was a tropical planet at first, and then they changed it, and then forgot to change the name in the translation or something. I don't know. Just a weird one. I thought it was worth mentioning how one little translation or name error caused like this big chain reaction that I guess it really still doesn't matter. Halo Infinite actually had a yikes moment. Wait, it had a lot of yikes moments, but one really notable one was the infamous Bonobo incident. I mean, Halo Infinite was criticized pretty heavily for not having a whole lot of updates early on. Like, the time it took for a new update to come to Halo Infinite was ridiculous. Easily, very, very clear, clean, and cut ridiculous. I don't know if there's any other word to describe it. Despite the slow content drought for the beginning of 2022, the months following the release of Halo Infinite, occasionally there still would be like a little cosmetic update or something, like a new nameplate. For Juneteenth, they added in a special Juneteenth emblem to commemorate the abolishment of slavery in the United States, and the name of the emblem, Bonobo. If you don't know what a bonobo is, it's a type of chimpanzee, which is like a type of ape, which of course led many people to be confused as to, first of all, why it had this name, and some people drew the conclusion that possibly using a name of an ape is maybe a little racially insensitive, especially for an emblem that's supposed to, you know, celebrate the ending of slavery. I don't know. I swear, when this happened, we have never seen an update come to Halo Infinite so quickly correcting this. When Halo Infinite released, Big Team Battle was broken for like 3.5 weeks before anyone anyone at 343 Industries noticed it and was able to like reset it so that it started working again. This thing was fixed in an hour. Multiple apologies were issued as well. Now, of course, everybody wanted to know, how did this happen? And it seems like the main issue was likely the fact that Bonobo is actually a placeholder for an internal developer tool that 343 has used across multiple Halo titles, and that placeholder text just slid through the cracks and ended up being the name of this specific emblem. But yeah, just overall like a big yikes moment. Almost as bad as that time that one Halo community manager blamed the real life war for why Halo Wars wasn't working at the time, iterating that he was too busy thinking about what it would be like for his son to grow up in a World War III era or something like that. It was a wild time. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think this was really anything to it, but I mean, it's just a big yikes moment. You're just like, whoa, what is going on in Halo Infinite today?
Do you guys remember how broken Red Dead Online was at launch? Like, it was an absolute mess. Like, there was an instance where a patch completely got rid of all NPCs and animals, so you would just be in this open world, completely empty, no one there, you just by yourself, which is bad enough by itself, but it would be trumped by the time they completely removed shooting on accident. Yes, this Wild West game, all about riding around on your horse and shooting people, they managed to somehow make it to where you can't shoot. And obviously people were pretty upset and were like, hey guys, maybe we should take a break from developing GTA Online and put some time into Red Dead Online, which I mean they eventually did. They eventually would fix this error, because how are you gonna play Red Dead Online without shooting? That doesn't work.
Let's talk about Fatal Frame for a second. At least that's what it's called here in the United States. It's called Project Zero in Europe and Australia, and it was just called Zero in Japan. But essentially it was a horror survival game released back in 2001 for the PlayStation 2. And of course, this game is heavily inspired by games like Resident Evil or Silent Hill. You go and explore a mansion, there's like ghosts and stuff that are hostile. And you know, they play into this like whole camera thing as like the camera is the one way that you're going to be able to survive. It's an antique camera that manages to capture ghosts. Hey, if Luigi can use a vacuum in the same year, why can't we use a camera? Now, the gameplay itself isn't really the criticism here. It's more once again, the localization of the game, specifically the North American release of the game. Because look, this is what the box art looks like in Japan. This is what it looks like in Europe, like the PAL version. And this is the US version. Fatal Frame, based on a true story. What? I'm sorry, this is based on a true story? What? How? What? How do they know? I don't know. This is one of the wildest claims to me. And I tried to look into this a little bit more. And I guess the consensus is, of course, this is probably like a weird translation tagline they thought would somehow sell more copies of the game. The game's plot and story are based on real folklore, urban legends that come out of Japan, like little spooky fireside stories people would tell each other. So I guess it is based on true stories in the sense of they are real stories that exist that are fiction, but they're not based on true stories, as in like stories that are real. They're just based on real folklore stories that existed. This is so weird.
Megaman Battle Network 4 released in 2003 in Japan and in 2004 in North America for the Game Boy Advance. And they would actually end up splitting this into two games, Red Sun and Blue Moon, like, you know, Pokemon games were split into two versions. And this actually marked a pretty big shift for the tone in the series, from gameplay to even the art style. Now, for whatever reasons unknown to this day, Capcom's localization team did an absolutely horrible job when they translated this game to English. Like, actually, some of the worst translation I've ever seen. Let me read you some bangers that I found. There is so many electrical store. Megaman got earphone. Let's go, Lan. You are father called and I heard all about it. Megaman, where are the clue the kidnapper mentioned? Net battles are a lot funner if you enjoy them with friends. This is why old mans who can only make kites are trouble. Try cooling your heels and wait for the match anyway. She just scream like a little girl and run away. I don't really want to get along. I, other words, become friends with your Navi. I'm Megaman, your tournament opponent. The battler who tossed aside all others to claim the... Go the room on the second floor. You win a high-tech set of earphone. I felt like I was having a stroke reading all these. Now, these are absolutely atrocious, and, obviously, as I said, some of the worst translations I've ever seen. Now, some fans speculate that the localization was this bad because they were rushing to meet a deadline, so they could align with, the anime promotion or, merchandise production, but this has never been confirmed by Capcom, so there's others who think maybe they were given a bad script and, they translated off some script without context, but I guess that wouldn't really explain all the errors either. And for a while, there was, tons of people documenting all the spelling errors they could find and all the funny things that would happen. Now, 2 years later, a sequel would come out called Megaman Battle Network 5, and that one kind of had better translation, as far as I could tell. So this was kind of just a fluke that one time where they completely f***ed it up. In Zelda Ocarina of Time for the N64, there was this glitch players would do called Bottom of the Well Early, which would basically allow you to get to a section early in Kakariko Village that was at the bottom of the well. Now, back in the day, players would do this by using a chicken or kuko or whatever it's called, and then do a triple slash, and then they would kind of glitch through the wall and fall down the well, and then be able to swim down and go from there. When normally you're supposed to learn a song or something, and then it will open up for you and you're able to go down there. And at some point between the original game releasing in 1998 and 2011, when Ocarina of Time 3D would release for the 3DS, someone at Nintendo must have learned about this glitch. Because in order to stop players from doing this glitch, they just put a boulder at the bottom of the well where you couldn't go into the next section until that boulder is removed, which would just automatically happen once you reach the requirements to go down onto the bottom of the well like you're supposed to. And in this footage you can pretty clearly see how they just blocked it off with this giant stone. So Nintendo thought they were probably being pretty clever by blocking players off. But what they must have forgotten about is that this game has a day and night cycle, and apparently that means there is 2 different versions of Kakariko Village. Because in the night version, when you perform the glitch like back in the day, the boulder is not there. So you're just able to do the glitch the old way, but only at night. And then I found some people calling this rock the 9 to 5 boulder because it's only there during night, and then at night it goes home from its job, which is pretty funny. And also, while they did try to block off this original version, I think there's tons of other ways that people found now in the 3DS version to get down to the bottom of the well, where they clip outside the map somewhere else and then just, go to the entrance point for the bottom of the well. So I guess they effectively did nothing.
Imagine this. It's 1998 and you're a gamer who plays on the PC or Mac OS, and there's a real-time tactical strategy video game you're excited for called Myth 2 Soul Blighter. Actually, the gaming industry in 1998 was really wild if you look at it. Myth 2 Soul Blighter was developed by Bungie, like the Halo and Destiny Bungie. But Bungie back then was still a really small studio getting itself out there. They had a team that they had been building up. They had put out a couple of games before, and though the game was originally set to release on November 1st of 1998, the game just wouldn't be ready in time. They had been adding a ton of features, but they were still gonna try to get that game out right before Christmas time, which they decided to aim for a December 13th finish. The game released on December 28th. They just missed their initial goal, but hey, they were able to finish the game and still get it out during the holiday season, which is still a big deal. People who get a new Mac for Christmas in 1998, maybe they want to buy a new game to go with it. But things didn't stop there. There was a really, really big issue in the game. The day that the game was shipped to stores, Bungie was contacted by their Japanese publisher, who had an employee who was working on the Asian translations of the game and discovered a pretty massive bug in the Windows version. She had installed the game in the root directory of her hard drive, and then when she used the uninstalled program to uninstall the game later, okay, get this, the game would successfully uninstall. That part worked, but it also would erase all of the contents on your hard drive. Yo, you don't like Myth 2? Well, you don't get a computer anymore. This is a pretty big deal, but at the time, Bungie was still kind of a smaller studio, and while a lot of people would play Myth 2, they could have ignored the problem if they wanted to and maybe get a little bit of bad backlash, patch the game out in future copies of the game, and maybe nobody would notice. They could just release a patch on their website that would fix the problem ahead of time and people would look there. But this was old Bungie, the old Bungie that actually cared about their player base, not the modern day Bungie that, it is a mess over there. Despite the fact that it was pretty unlikely that anybody would usually install the game onto the root directory of their hard drive, Bungie ultimately decided to kind of do the right thing and at least put out a statement letting people know that this was an issue in the game. They ended up recalling every single shipped unit of the game, which ended up costing Bungie $800,000 in expenses and fines from retailers for missing their release deadline. They also had to call the production managers to halt printing copies of the game, and they had to contact retailers to tell them to refuse shipments that did still manage to get out if they did arrive to stores so that a customer wouldn't accidentally buy the game. And of course, Bungie was still a pretty small team, and they had to go and manually open up the carton for the box of the game, take out the unit, unwrap the shrink wrap, take out the old CD, put it in a destroy pile, put a new CD in, re-shrink wrap it. It was like a whole big ordeal, and then they like kind of put a new UPC label on it. It's like the little barcode number code thing for it, and they had to like put a sticker on it so that they knew it was the new version. It was a big ordeal. And imagine doing all of this in a very short time because you still want your company to be able to survive because you were planning on banking on a, holiday release for a game. Nonetheless, by December 30th, copies of the game were back on the way to stores. And I think the general consensus back then across like the gaming community was that Bungie did the right thing. And a lot of people kind of praised them for just biting the bullet, losing the money on it, and doing something that, would save people's computers. Maybe some of this bad PR actually ended up helping Bungie in the long run because it was like a bad thing that happened, but then at the same time, it kind of got their name circling around. People are like, look, it's a good game. And, the developers really care. And then this ended up getting them like an investment from Take-Two Interactive, which would then give them more secure funding so they could work on games like Marathon and eventually Halo, which then Microsoft would swoop in and buy out Take-Two Interactive's shares and also acquire Bungie. And that led to Halo. So a net win, I guess.
And while we're on the topic of weird spelling errors, there's actually two more I found from the 90s. The first one came from Virtual Lab, which was a game for the Virtual Boy. There was like this block stacking game and kind of was one of the only or very few titles developed for the Virtual Boy. Like this thing was an absolute failure back in the day. Nonetheless, whoever was in charge for typing out the text for the cartridge must have had a sticky keyboard because he typed Nintendo instead of Nintendo. Like his N's are doubled up. And then also just 2 years later, the Sega Saturn game Plastwind, which only released in Japan, I think, had this wild cover that just has a lot going on. And there's some English text in the background, and none of that text makes any sense. Like, it almost looks like a very random order of just like English words that maybe make a little bit sense or not at all. Or it could just be a very bad English translation of Japanese text. Nonetheless, most of it doesn't make any sense. And they even repeat the title of the game Plastwind a couple times, but then they ended up misspelling it, calling it Plastwind in one of the instances. So they couldn't even spell the name of the game right in their nonsensical text. This is just a trippy cover to look at, honestly. Another kind of classic and funny mishap during the translation stage for a video game happened with Double Dragon 3 The Sacred Stones. The opening for the two-player mode reads, "A year has passed since Bimmy and Jimmy defeated the Shadow Warriors." Now, if you're wondering what kind of name Bimmy is, you might be onto something because his name is supposed to be Billy and not Bimmy. People started making fun of this, and there was a Angry Video Game Nerd episode early on where he made fun of this too.
Bimmy and Jimmy? How'd they make a mistake like this? Bimmy isn't even a real name. How did this happen?
But the joke actually didn't stop there. In 2012, when Double Dragon Neon released for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, they had a set of characters in it called the mistranslated mutants Bimmy and Jammy. Obviously, the Bimmy part is a reference to the classic spelling error, but they also misspelled Jimmy this time, calling him Jammy. And obviously, they're titled The Mistranslated Mutants, so, it is pretty funny that they made fun of themselves like years later, and kind of a clever little reference. Also, randomly, while I was doing research, I found some more errors with Halo 2, and this one specifically is the Halo 2 limited edition that released in Japan. If you look at the outside of the box, there's like the Blue Crystal Xbox with like the silver round thing in the middle, which this is not quite the version you would get in Japan. Instead, it would be the Blue Crystal Shell Xbox, but it would have a plaque circle in the middle. console. This silver version is the Canada exclusive one, which is nowhere near Japan. So whenever they designed this box, they obviously used the wrong graphic. Also, a more modern version of something like this happening is this PlayStation 5 box, where instead of a controller, they printed another PlayStation on it, but just like the top part of it. And also there's been recorded instances of people receiving like their Switch dock, but the logo is off-center on the Switch dock, and it's just slightly to the right. Also, another quick one is the box, or the back of the box for Sonic Colors on the Wii has a spelling error, and instead of perform new moves, it said preform new moves.
For this next one, we have to go back to 2008 with the game Okami, which was a game that some people were pretty excited to see a release on Nintendo Wii. Now, it had already come out on PlayStation 2 prior, but a Wii release was a big deal because more people would be able to try out the game for the first time ever. But there was a little mishap that happened along the way. You see, back in 2008, it was the Wild West of the internet, and people looked for video game information on IGN's website. I know. Weird. IGN was like a source of information for stuff, but IGN would like have screenshots of upcoming games, and if you wanted new information on games, IGN was like the go-to place. So somewhere along the way, Capcom released, a picture of what the box art for Okami would look like on the Wii. IGN, with their reporters or whatever, found that image, posted on their website, but every time IGN posted something, they would slap a little IGN watermark on all of their images. And then when the game was getting ready to be published, somewhere along the line, I guess a Capcom employee didn't have the actual file of the box art on hand. So he went to the IGN website and downloaded the IGN version with the watermark, and that's the version that ended up getting published. I mean, it wasn't really that big of a deal. Capcom went on to say like it was a mistake and that they would offer a new box to anybody who wanted one, and they would go on to fix later box releases of the game. But interestingly enough, when we went to go look into it on like eBay, every version of Okami had the IGN watermark still misprinted on the box art. So if you have a copy of Okami for the Wii, take a look at it. Do you have the IGN watermark there still? Or was yours maybe a late print that doesn't have the IGN watermark? I think the versions without the IGN watermark are probably rarer than the versions with the IGN watermark. So there you go. Let's talk about Resident Evil Revelations. Now, Resident Evil already had kind of a weird time after Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6. People were excited to see what the future of Resident Evil would look like, and it was going to be on the Nintendo 3DS, which was kind of weird. People were worried that, Resident Evil was going to be doing some weird stuff, jump into 3DS. Maybe it'd be a low quality thrown together game. Fortunately enough, Resident Evil Revelations wasn't actually that bad. It was just kind of like a different thing, but it was more of a horror game than other Resident Evil games, so that was cool. But there was a little issue on the boxes of the games, like on the spine specifically. They misspelled the game. It was called Resident Evil Revelations. They put the I in the wrong spot. I don't know how this happened. Interestingly enough, the publisher was Capcom. Again, they're kind of 0 for 2 on this, so way to go, Capcom.
We've talked plenty about Marvel's Avengers on this channel. We talked about how it died. We talked about why it failed. We talked about, even that the game wasn't that bad, actually. We played a little bit. It wasn't too bad. What we never talked about is that in June of 2021, when they released a patch for the game, it would actually dox a bunch of players by showing their full IP address on the screen. So if you were a streamer or, you would show your friends your gameplay, it would just have your IP right there on the screen. And for some reason, this bug was only in the PS5 version of the game.
How does that even happen?
I have no idea, how to manage to do that, but they did offer or they did make an official statement on Twitter saying, please refrain from streaming for now if you're experiencing this issue. We will update when the issue has been resolved. I was just kind of thinking like this whole game being a live service game was already kind of goofy, and then they're patching and stuff like this, just like showing the IP address right there on the screen. I guess they played with fire, and that's what they got.
2007 had Imagine Babies with the Z, except in Europe it was just Imagine Babies, spelled correctly. But if you look at the European box art, look at the babies here. Zoom and enhance a little bit. They got stock photos of random babies that still had the watermarks on, and they were just like, whatever, who cares? Print it. Yeah, that's just how the box art is, I guess. Just Ubisoft up to no good.
It sounds like the cheapest possible production ever. And mind you, when you zoom in and enhance a little bit, it's 3 different stock sites too.
They weren't even consistent. I mean, I know this was a time when virtual pet games were popular with Nintendogs, but like the game doesn't even look realistic. So the photos of like real people on it always completely throws me off in video games like this, because it's like they're like chibi-fied characters. They look nothing like this. The game's nothing like the picture. Dim in the chat wants to see gameplay of Imagine Babies. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, every Friday we do a live stream where we record this section of the video live. Feel free to swing by on YouTube or Twitch, 8 p.m. Pacific.
This is just the intro. This
What
isn't even the
is that?
gameplay. Oh, wait. What's this? Oh my god, dude. This kid, dude.
Oh, he just ruined the camera.
No, dude, that was a red 8K camera, dude. That's 40K.
Wait, this looks worse than I thought. Is this even a game?
Oh, you go to the room and then you like shake the baby or what? Oh no, you play dress up with the baby. Oh, dude, mowing the lawn.
Does the baby get to mow the lawn? That doesn't sound safe.
I don't know, but maybe you have to mow around the baby.
What does this have to do with the babies?
I think this is a weird
This guy
backyard.
kind of sucks at mowing the lawn.
Yeah, honestly.
They're like really struggling to mow this lawn.
Baldur's Gate was kind of a surprise hit of 2023, and with its popularity, the developer actually did a good job introducing patches over time and adding new content. Patch 8 is supposed to be the last big patch for Baldur's Gate 3. It's gonna add crossplay, a photo mode, and 12 new subclasses, so a ton of content is gonna get added. Now, earlier this year, they accidentally released this patch on PlayStation 5, where players were allowed to access all the new content early, ahead of schedule. And the developers themselves were kind of confused how this happened, because they hadn't even beta tested this patch at that time. While we're recording this video, I think the stress test for this patch is going on, so the patch is expected to come out soon. But some players were able to play it early in January of 2025, ahead of release. Look at this picture. Can you guys see what's wrong here? Well, if you can't, I'll explain what is wrong in just a second, but let me explain what Galgun Double Piece is all about first, because this is an insane game. This is an on-rail shooter where you play some guy where through some Cupid mishap or something, you are now being chased by every single girl around you, and you have to shoot them with this anti-love gun or something, so they stop trying to get to you and trying to swarm you and stuff. And there's some pretty interesting angles that come out throughout the whole game. Some pretty like, you know, explicit angles. I don't even know what to call this. I mean, I don't know how to also explain it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Don't act like you don't have 100 hours in this game.
I probably have all 4 versions that released of this game. But hey, we won't talk about that. Anyways, this is a pretty crazy game, and it actually did get a sequel and released on multiple platforms. It's on the Switch nowadays and all that good stuff. And we might even see another sequel in the future. Who knows? Now, this picture I showed you earlier, on the back of the box, it is rated E for everyone, even though right next to it, it says sexual content, which is the majority of this game is sexual content. So the front of the box has the mature rating, which is the actual rating. When you look at the ESRB website, that's what it's supposed to have. But on the back, it says it's for everyone. And let me show you some more gameplay, and you guys will see why this is definitely not E for everyone.
Are we going to get our channel demonetized now?
We'll see. Superman for the Nintendo 64 goes down in history as one of the worst games ever made. It is just a complete mess. I feel like everybody knows the story of Superman 64 at this point. What you might not know is that when they printed the box, they also messed up, because instead of saying Superman, the new Superman Adventures, it says Superman, the new Superman Avengers. This misprint actually happens multiple times on the box. It's on the side and on the back.
I did go ahead and look up the official strategy guide, which I didn't even know there was a strategy guide, and they did get the name correctly on the strategy guide, fortunately.
So whatever company made a strategy guide at least had enough, presence of mind to spell adventures, right?
Okay, also I found a listing of the game on eBay, and in the game it included a comic book called Superman Adventures, spelled correctly, and a poster with the art of the game and the name and the logo in the top right, spelled correctly. So I don't know what that means.
I don't know. That's actually even more confusing. Because they clearly had the right version of the logo.
Yeah, unless they only sent the font out and they're just like, use this font when you make the art.
I guess it could be it, yeah. And I guess the Superman logo itself is probably like, a separate thing. Hey, at least they spelled Superman right.
For now. Did you guys know that Mario Kart 8 is the 5th best-selling video game of all time? And the box art makes no sense for this game. I'm being a little critical here. They obviously made some design choices if you're looking at the box art. But if you actually look at the box art for the original Wii U version of Mario Kart 8, you'll see something kind of weird about it. If you look here at this box art, right, we have Mario and Peach, and they're on the road. They're doing their little like spinny thing. And it's fine. Mario Kart 8 did the whole thing where you could like go on surfaces, you know, and it wraps around and they have all the weird roadways. But if you look at Luigi and Bowser and the other racers, they are straight up going the wrong way. Like they're racing backwards. You could follow the course with your finger and you can see it goes up and around and they're just driving the wrong way. Or Mario and Peach are driving the wrong way. Nonetheless, someone's going the wrong way here.
Yeah, actually, who is going the wrong way? Because there's more people going the other way than Mario and Peach.
They're trolling, dude. I don't know. This made me go down this rabbit hole. And if we pull up the Switch version, because I was like, surely, you know, they'd be like, okay, I mean, I get why they wanted to do it. They wanted to like show that, you know, get a better angle or whatever. But the Nintendo Switch version, they changed the thing, but they do it again, I think.
Oh, this
Does
one.
it? Or did they fix it?
Well...
Is it even connected? What is going on here?
Yeah, wait, no, they kind of fixed it, yeah. I think it is fixed, but the track itself doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, wait, what is going on? It just disappears behind Peach's head. I like this one better, though. I feel like it's not as directly disagreeable like the Wii U version.
But why are they driving upside down? You know, there's still...
I mean, that's a part of the game. That was like a big selling point.
You drive upside down in Mario Kart 8?
I mean, you could... I don't know. I haven't played Mario Kart 8 in a minute.
I think you
can.
I don't think you do.
I think you could drive upside down.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing.
Someone in the comments let us know.
Now, if we go back in time a little bit further, let's go to Mario Kart Double Dash for the GameCube, because there's some other weird stuff going on in this Mario Kart game as well. Do you already know what's wrong with this one?
No, actually.
So you don't know what's wrong with this one. Okay. If you had to take a guess, what looks weird to you in Mario Kart Double Dash for the GameCube?
I don't know. They seem to be all going the right way. All the stuff seems to be spelled right. You know, Double Dash, Mario Kart.
For this video, that's pretty good.
Yeah, team up for twice the fun. Okay. Maybe, like, you know, what's Donkey Kong's son called? Diddy Kong.
Diddy Kong?
Shouldn't be on the shoulders. He should be on the back of the cart. I don't know.
Luigi's hat. They put the L backwards.
Oh yeah, look at that.
It's just not going the right way. It is the backwards L. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Maybe the original image had them both going because Mario's symmetrical, and then they mirrored it for the box art, and then they didn't notice.
So Returnal is a pretty interesting game. The way the game works is you start at this crash site and then you progress through the game. And if you die, you wake up back again at the crash site. It's on some like Groundhog Day type vibe. You know what I mean? You just go back and, you know, there's some progress that carries over. You basically have to beat the game in one life. But when they did a patch for the game, players reported an issue where they would lose their save file. It would like straight up yeet their save file and they would lose all their progress, which I guess it's not that big of a deal since you lose all your progress when you die, but it's still pretty frustrating. And even after Sony did try to salvage some of this and some players were able to get their save file back, there is still some players that permanently lost their save file forever, which I mean obviously sucks. You know, you're playing this game, you're unlocking stuff, and then you have to do it all over again, which is something that happens with a lot of modern games, I think. Remember, there was like Star Wars Outlaws had a similar issue where save files would just, you know, get corrupted. People would lose like a ton of progress and stuff.
Yeah, our friend Cheeseburger spent like the money on the most expensive version of the game. And then he sadly lost all of his data and rage quit the game. That's all I know about the game is that Cheeseburger wanted to play it.
Yeah, I played it recently too. And I kind of want my money back, but that's besides the point.
One thing that's been pretty consistent in this video is that 2008 was just a weird time. Technically, this is 2007 because it was Tiger Woods 2008. But I think there's something with the 2008 being cursed. Tiger Woods had like a golfing game in 2008, and there was like a semi-viral funny clip that would circulate around of a glitch that would occur in PGA of Tiger Woods walking on water. Because, I don't know, for whatever reason, the glitch would make it so the game didn't register a water hazard, And Tiger Woods would just be like, yo, I'm going to golf this anyways. Why not? So this became kind of a meme. It was obviously a mess up on EA's part because they didn't patch it out. Like, they didn't catch the glitch. But they decided for the next game, Tiger Woods 2009, they would lean into it during marketing. And they released this commercial. I think it's even more interesting that the commercial decided to respond directly to the guy who uploaded the original video onto YouTube 17 years ago about the glitch. Just kind of a clever play by EA. This ended up becoming a recurring glitch. I don't know if it's intentional or not at this point, but later Tiger Woods games would still continue to have like standing on water glitches. Maybe they just couldn't figure it out in later releases. But hey, nonetheless, they leaned into it, so I guess they can get away with it. So I feel pretty good about the list that we ended up putting together for this video, but if you feel like we missed something, do let us know in the comments down below. Also, huge shout out to our patrons and our YouTube members. Thank you guys for supporting us, making these types of long form content possible. Also, if you enjoy the video, you want a little bit more, you can come to our live streams on Fridays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we record some parts of our videos and hang out with the chat for a bit. You can check us out on Twitch or YouTube. But otherwise, that's it. Make sure you're subscribed if you're new. And we'll see you guys next time with a new video. Bye. You should just be like, look at this. Like, you should just show both of them, both sides of it, and be like, do you guys see what's wrong here?
Look at this picture. Can you guys spot the difference? Okay.
No, you have to say what's wrong here because it's not.
Oh, yeah.
The whole thing's different. They're two different pictures. The whole thing's different.
Okay.